Awesome. Thank you very much for attending this afternoon. So for those that don't know, my name's Ollie. I'll be hosting the session today on behalf of the Chamber. This is actually a subject pretty close to my heart, where I spent 7 years doing exactly this, which was cloud transformational projects. Chris and I just had a little chat offline about some of the challenges that come with that we've lived through, and scars and warts and all. But yeah, so today we've got Chris Ward-Jones, who's the Chief Technology Officer for DCI Intelligence, and also Lee Norval, who is the Chief Cloud Officer for DC Intelligence. So we're going to just sort of discuss all things cloud, but this is really your opportunity as a business to get some valuable insights around how you as a business move forwards with cloud projects, and also learn from other people's mistakes. There are all sorts of things to take into consideration when you look to move to the cloud, and it's not something that people should just necessarily leap into. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Chris and Lee to introduce themselves, and just, yeah, let's kick off with some of these questions.
Hi, so Chris Ward-Jones, CTO of DCI, and we also, as a company, we have our own cloud offering, which we work with enterprise organizations, we work with SMEs, we work with startups, so companies of all sizes consuming it. And that cloud is known as Blocks. And Lee is our Chief Cloud Officer.
Yep, so afternoon. And so yeah, Lee Norval, so I'm the Chief Cloud Officer. And I head up the Blocks branded side of our cloud, helping to deliver the platform, basically deliver the services and ongoing support to our customers. And more frequently these days as well is the hand-holding and getting customers on board and making sure they've got the right applications for requirements now.
So let's demystify the term cloud. Let's just start at the very basics. We live in the UK, which means there's one constant cloud above us. At least it feels like that most of the time. The actual sort of, really there's lots of clouds, isn't there? And it's understanding about how this all sort of comes together. It's a marketing term that sort of encompassed everything to do with compute being typically off premise. From your perspective, when you speak to customers about cloud services, what do they typically relate to?
I think there's a number of sort of sides now to this, because we're so used to what we call the hyperscalers, so Azure, AWS, and Google, and basically it's quite a cold service. It's quite a large platform. There's a lot of complexity to it, and you're not necessarily getting that hand-holding exercise that goes with it, the support that's required to maybe move to the cloud or kind of deliver on your applications or services through the cloud. And this is one thing that we're kind of hearing a little bit more of, is that we're more of a bespoke solution provider, cloud provider. We really like to help our people and our customers understand the platform, understand how they can utilize that. So I think this is a bit more of a value add on what we're doing, and people tend to kind of like that concept from us as well. We're a local local data center, we're a local company, so we do really like to try and work with everyone quite close to us.
It's an interesting point as well, because there are some real pitfalls with some of those hyperscaler cloud environments. I've got one particular friend who ran up a few £100,000 on his credit card with AWS through not getting a few things quite right. So it is definitely something to be cautious about. So I guess with that in mind, you're offering sort of an a la carte service around cloud. You're offering that hand-holding exercise to get people to cloud without necessarily having to take the risks with credit cards, on Azure interfaces, right? But why the cloud? What typically do customers benefit from?
Well, I think with, as you see, with the cloud going forward, we are seeing, one primary bit is reduced costs as well. That's quite clear and evident that that's happening. But it's also the flexibility and dynamic that can be added to the business. Its ability, when you're growing a business and you're managing the business, you're concentrating on getting customers in, you're getting managing this, to look after the infrastructure and IT that goes with it. That can be a bit of a headache. So, moving to the cloud can alleviate a lot of this. So you're just basically taking care of your business, and then you just have that management relationship with the cloud provider just to provide the services. So, you're alleviating a lot of your own time concerns about the infrastructure, and then you're not having to invest into PCs and servers within on-premise. We've now got the work from home culture, so you're centralizing your resources. It just makes things a little bit more easier to be in that sort of area.
And typically up until now, most people have been using, over the last decade, we've seen the shift to email being cloud first, right, in terms of its deployment as opposed to on-premise. But what about connectivity? I mean, there's benefits there as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that are coming with that. So, the broadband infrastructure is increasing in the UK. So that adds to, how we do stuff. We've got the centralization of data. Again, that becomes quite good. So, typically, if you've got people with data on their laptops, you can run the risk of GDPR, for example, by potentially centralizing your data storage within the cloud. You know who it is, where it's looked after. So, there's a couple of these little aspects of that. And it's accessible from a laptop. You can do resources applications from your mobile phone. So it becomes very accessible, depending on where you are and how you are accessing it.
And I'm guessing for most people, they've typically done this in an on-premise capacity where they've connected to servers. Just as a show of hands, how many people have used VPN type solutions in the past? Okay. So, VPN being sort of technology that's rapidly becoming, previous generation almost, when you start to look at some of the things that you can do now with cloud services that are very agile in terms of connectivity. Cloud, does it remove the requirements for VPN 100% of the time?
Well, this comes down to how you kind of want to do it. So you can, use your VPN to connect in. So it almost becomes like you do have that networking and localized services actually close to you. Sometimes if you're using a web application or you're using something, you can secure that via web browser interface. So you can do that as well. And secondly to this, there are more evolving technologies called SD-WAN that allows you to connect your office, your home office, etc., into the cloud without the need of a VPN. And again, that's all very, sort of stringent on the way it controls access, who's got access to what. So, these technologies are growing, and then it does become a little bit more simpler for management and peace of mind of knowing that everything is so kind of nicely secured and looked after.
And if you take that technology, sort of some of the more, cloud native technologies like software defined networking and device health and all the other things, so that that it's that device and that user's hand that gets access to that service, then that obviously removes some of those requirements, but and makes that a very secure connection. But in terms of, what do you see as the common use cases? What are the sort of top 5 common use cases for cloud?
So we have a number of different sort of areas that we're working in, particularly, sort of enterprise. So we're helping some SMEs move to the cloud. So again, we're doing that in cost saving and centralization scenario. We have the bit with data migration. So maybe they've got some legacy data storage that is maybe becoming out of date. But obviously the data is very key to any business, keeping that stored and backed up. So we're helping to bring that into our platform. We've got multiple high availability and resources to make sure the data is stored in multiple locations and really locked in secure. And then we've got the bits that the guys are developing applications as well. So if you have your own software-based application, you can actually host it on our platform, and then use that to sell your product. So if you are developing a CRM product, any of the applications, mobile-based applications, we help with that. As the platform was the point to deliver this. So that's come to key bits. And then we also in our platform have a marketplace as well. So this allows some of our customers to put their software within our platform, and anyone else coming to the platform can then see the software there and consume it as well. So it's also an inbuilt marketplace to help boost people that are using our platform, and help produce the way that the applications are spread.
That's awesome. And in terms of that application footprint, obviously that's not a single app. That can be all sorts of different things, from finance systems through to, as you suggested, CRM, and then on to more native mobile type deployments and native mobile backends. But in terms of, last year was, just a crazy year when you start to think about, what happened from a technology standpoint. The last stat that I read was that we sort of jumped 10 years forwards in terms of adoption of services like Zoom and various other platforms. The cloud obviously helps with some of that scaling capacity. And for anybody that's not aware, if you've got something humming in the corner of an office, typically there's not a lot more capacity left in that. Is it worth just talking about how, the cloud helps both upscale and downscale operations?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a few sort of cases that have worked quite well. So, one typically at the moment is a lot of people move to hosted desktops. So within the cloud, we are a Microsoft certified provider. So you build out desktops which you can access from your own laptop or a mobile device. So again, it keeps that central, to the way that goes. And then we've been doing user cases with some companies that have had their own IT infrastructure in place. It's been aging, so they've been looking to move to the cloud. And we did quite an interesting little exercise with them where they had their own server room, they had some air conditioning, and in the end, they actually worked out they were spending, I think it was close on to about £500 a month just in electric to support the infrastructure. So, moving to the cloud allowed them to sort of alleviate these costs as well. So, as well as not having to go and spend another £20,000–30,000 on hardware, they were saving a considerable amount of money in electricity. So, these are some more of the cases that we're seeing where people are saying, well, they're downscaling the office, the work-life balance is then being taken into account. So we're now looking at work from home. When the offices are working up, it's 2 days in the office, 2 days from home, 1 day with a customer. So you're not central anymore. You're not sitting at your desk at the office, or you're not at home, or you're not on the road. It's a very big mixture these days, and the cloud can really help to kind of help that work, and you can benefit from that.
Especially when you think, like you say, I mean, the remote desktop capability, most of this technology is not particularly new in terms of the concept. The actual evolution of it is quite new, but the idea that, there are vendors out there such as Citrix, VMware, Microsoft with RDSH, and also with WVD, but the idea that you can have your corporate desktop running in the cloud and access it from any device was pretty important last year for a lot of organizations, right?
Yeah.
Did you do any cloud transformation projects for organizations in terms of lifting those desktops, those physical desktops, and moving?
Yeah, there was a few transformation projects on that side, and there was more of the smaller sort of guys that, sort of 10, 20 people within an office as well, that just needed to kind of actually get to grips with this. And so, actually building a brand new platform for them to be able to do that. Another kind of interesting bit that we did is we took some data on board for a customer. And part of the agreement is, they were very concerned about where the data lives. So obviously, it's in a secure building in Cambridge. We did agreement with them that we did a dedicated piece of hardware for them. We connected it to our cloud. And then they have a walk-in right where they can come along and pick that kit up with all their data on it. It is their data after all, and that's how we want to secure it. We've got the facility, physical and cyber-wise to kind of secure that, but it's your data, it's the business data. So, that was another kind of interesting point of having to onboard and do the transformation. But the concern there was, well, where is the data? Where does it live? They don't want it in Ireland or in, Munich or, anything like that. It was very important for them to be UK based. So, was able to assist them with that and give them comfort that, this is where your data resides.
When we think about users in the traditional sense, we typically onboard them with laptops and various other hardware, which is typically a CapEx expenditure of the business. With regards to the cloud, it's very much an OpEx based, service essentially, right? Is it from your perspective? How does that help customers?
Well, I think it gives a kind of a repeat subscription fee. So that what your monthly spend is, You know, it's the way we try and run the cloud is it's, you know, it's a fixed monthly fee, so you do understand what you're going with. It's not running away with costs that people have been known for and doing within, you know, AWS and Azure. So it's very easy to kind of finance and say, okay, this is my cost for the year and this is what it comes down to. You know, and it allows you to use some of your commodity and older hardware still, because a lot of the resources, the sort of crunching of numbers are done within the servers in the cloud. So you don't have to go out and buy the latest PC or the latest server. You know, you can still access this from that, or, you know, buy a low-end Chromebook or your mobile phone. So, you know, it has advantages of expanding existing kit without having to go and do that. You know, and we will work with IT integrators, you know, that will maybe be doing a IT refresh for some of their customers. You know, so we work in tandem. So the IT integrator is working with the customer, and then we're working with the cloud side. So, you know, the end goal there is just to deliver something to the customer that's, you know, acceptable within budget and within the technical requirements.
Fantastic. And there's a question from Simone, which is, you know, what are the key risks of moving to the cloud?
I mean, one of the key risks there really is always been what people have been worried about is if you're looking at the hyperscalers, for example, you know, it's the data retention policies, because there are a lot of, you know, terms and conditions around these hyperscalers, and each product has its own sort of terms and conditions. So, you know, this could be about what they're doing with the data, how long they look after the data. So example, if you're using Office 365, when you're deleting emails or it's put into a separate folder, there's a retention policy on that, so it's not in there forever. So that's why there's backup services, etc. So it's just being aware of what these policies are. You know, when they're sort of thousands of pages long, it's quite complicated to go through. So that's one sort of element of getting caught up in the rigmarole of all the terms and conditions. The second one, which used to be more of a concern, was probably the connectivity side. You know, and as technology in networks increase in the UK, we're seeing this a lot better now. You know, particularly rural areas that are trying to do you know, video streaming and this side. You know, if it moves all totally to the cloud, it could be a little bit problematic to it. But we are seeing, you know, the newer technologies, new fibers being rolled out, you know, 5G private networks, which is some of the projects we're involved in as well. And this helps, you know, that low latency, you know, continuous connection to the cloud. So it's alleviating that side, but, you know, having that bit where there might be a potential outage or not having dual connectivity, you know, could be a slight risk. But, you know, I think the benefits at the moment and the way technology is progressing is starting to outweigh these risks.
And I think just going back to the point that Lee made about the T's and C's is a really key one there, actually. And that's kind of where we're different, because casting my mind back, there was an incident, I think a couple of years ago now, where lots of Amazon customers, lots of businesses were taken offline for a prolonged period of time because they lost access to their S3 buckets. And the T's and C's, you know, around the S3 buckets said they had, like, you know, 99.9999% uptime guaranteed, and they clearly didn't in this case. But nobody got any compensation because the T's and C's are so complicated. And it was actually a different service. It was the authentication service that went down that caused people to lose access to their S3 buckets because they couldn't authenticate. So the fact of the matter is, customers couldn't access their data, but because of a technicality, there was no compensation, there was no comeback, you know, and Amazon, you know, they didn't have to pay anybody anything. And that's where we're different. You know, we have one set of T's and C's. If you're our cloud customer, you're either working or you're not. We take responsibility. It's that simple.
And in that scenario as well, you touch on a really, really good point, which is, you know, if you take some of the hyperscalers, you're going to fall into a queue system. You're going to be based on priority. How many Azure credits you've purchased will indicate how much support you get and how quickly. How does that differ with yourselves? You know, it's not just a hand-holding exercise to cloud, but also when you're there, you know, somebody rings up and says, you know, I can't get access to my data. What happens in that scenario?
Yeah, I think that's a throwback to the way that we operate, right? So AWS, Azure, etc. They won't hold your hand through anything, whether it's onboarding or you've got an issue, really. What they will do is they will recommend something to you. They won't rubber stamp it. They won't say this will definitely work. What they'll do instead is they'll pass you over to a very expensive partner who will do all that for you and charge you a great big whacking consultancy fee. And that's where we're different, right? We have a concierge service. We hold our customers' hands throughout, and that's whether or not we're onboarding them or whether or not they're an existing customer and they've got an issue, whether that's an outage or not. You know, there's no prioritization as such there. It's one cloud, and if there's a problem impacting someone, it's impacting potentially everyone. So it gets bumped right up to the top of the queue.
Fantastic. Again, it's exactly the same philosophy that we have as an organization, because it's a journey, isn't it? You've got to walk hand in hand with your customers. You've got to understand their challenges and help them overcome them. There's a point from John, which is John Mansfield, which is a really, really important point, and not many people look at this with the gravity that it deserves at the moment. We have a similar challenge, right? And I'll walk through this. Pretty much most people that we compete with as a business, as ArcFlux competes with, moves data to the US without your knowledge, right? And when I say that, they integrate with third-party services that exist in the US, or they actually do migrate your data to the US and they make it your ownership to get consent to migrate that data out of the UK, typically through services. Well, it used to be through things like Privacy Shield. Privacy Shield was eroded in July last year. So the net of it, just to be sort of 100% clear, is you sign up for a service. It could be any service on the web. You put in contacts, details, all of that gets shifted to the US. You are now liable under Data Protection 2018 for not getting consent from the individual to move their data. And this,
Right.
you know, some of our competitors, the HubSpots and the MailChimps of this world, just do that, right? So the outcome of this is that when we start to think about data today, especially with our breakaway from GDPR and Data Protection 2018, having your data located in the UK, there's huge benefits to that, right?
Oh, massive, yeah, huge benefits. We've run campaigns based on that. You know, you give us your data and it's in the UK. End of. You know, we don't have any infrastructure in the US. We've worked with customers, etc. in the US. Yeah, absolutely, sure. Completely separate infrastructure. You know, our cloud infrastructure is based entirely in the UK, and we guarantee that that data stays within the UK.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as ourselves.
Yeah. And the problem's even worse than that, right? I mean, you know, if you haven't read the small print, which I'm sure you have, but lots of people haven't read the small print around Amazon and Azure and AWS, you put your data in their cloud and they will mine it. Mm-hmm. They're entitled to. So they will mine it and build their own, you know, insights for their own business based on that data. That's not their data, but they will access it.
Microsoft brought out a product called Sentinel about 2-3 years ago and said to customers, you can have it for free as long as you give us the ability to mine the data.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and again, there's all sorts of things going on. We're in a data center Cold War, a cloud Cold War as well, right? You've got services like Alibaba. You've got services like AWS and Azure, et cetera, et cetera. Is it worth touching on the fact that, you know, there are some legal implications to this right now, as in the US won't host their data elsewhere, you know, outside of the US effectively, right? So if they're not trusting the rest of the world to host their data, why are we allowing our data to go into their data centers, right?
Yeah, and that is a real problem. And the laws between, say, the UK and the US are effectively incompatible, the privacy laws. So it is a big problem. If you put your data, for instance, in Google, supposedly in the UK, the fact that it could quite easily end up out in the US, you know, say they had an outage in the UK, are you saying that they really haven't backed up your data to the US, or they haven't mined your data and got some of it in the US? Yeah, it's a big issue.
Absolutely. There's another series of questions from Stuart. Stuart, did you want to walk through these yourself? Because there's quite a bit to this. So just to make sure that you get answers to all the questions that you've got down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there is, some of it's already been covered anyway. So, you know, we're a charity, team of 11, have a server that worked fine and is probably creaking a bit, but there was just more pain associated with moving to cloud solutions and carrying on with what people were comfortable with.
Yeah.
The annoyance of VPNs and everything else over the last year means, of course, it's being looked at. So I think the security thing has been kind of covered, and that, you know, some of those concerns that are there, so that's okay. But in terms of, we see a lot of offers in terms of rolled up service provision. So the clouds is kind of part of IT provision, hardware, software, you know, all the other bits. Are there any benefits or issues compared to having the kind of cloud service provider as a separate provider? Started looking at OneDrive, Google Drive, so I'm interested in views on where that fits, and then also how much training staff typically need to get their heads around this, because as I said, it's something new when we've been used to working off a server and through a VPN link when we're away from the office.
Yeah, I think there's, you know, there's always a little bit of concept of learning when you sort of go to a new system. But, you know, I think there was a lot more coming on these days of how you can, you know, access and make it, you know, as least painful as possible. You know, there's a lot of people getting used to, you know, say OneDrive, Dropbox, and that familiarity, you know, so being able to produce something like that people are a lot used to these days, you know, so it's simulating that and how it can fit into your business. Yeah, you know, you are so used to accessing it in a certain way. So it's a case of trying to make it work the way you want it, but also maybe adding in the new way forward, you know, that you can evolve and learn over the next sort of, you know, 12 months, for example. You know, and just to take that pain point out of, you know, you've got this system, all of a sudden you can't use it. You know, it needs to be adapted to you rather than you adapting to it, sort of thing. So, you know, it's trying to work out the best side to that. So this could be a number of applications. You know, there is an open source piece of software called Nextcloud, which basically, you know, provides a Dropbox type experience. You can also have a synchronization tool from your laptop. So there's a number of features there that kind of mirror what you're doing now potentially, but also give you that almost newer interface that you can all kind of grow into and work with, a cloud sort of interface, realistically.
Fantastic. And also as well, you touched on another great point, which is when we start to think about backups. So it's great that, you know, people run around with laptops, especially in, you know, working from home. If you've got your laptop on your desk, it's got all your files and everything on it. All of a sudden the hard drive fries. What do you do in that scenario when you've lost your data? How does the cloud help with those sort of services?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways of doing this, and as we were saying just then, it's about making the service work for you, not the other way around. You know, so a lot of, you know, when you take on some of the new cloud services, you have to learn it to do that. You know, so it's a bit of a pain point. But, you know, there's some great open source tools like I was saying about Nextcloud, which can sync that. We have a cloud backup solution, which allows you to back up your cloud servers, but potentially your desktops, you know, as you roam around, your mobile phones. So, you know, your data is backed up, you say, if a hard drive fails, you know, and there is a bunch of security tools around this as well, because, you know, if you are roaming around with sensitive data on a laptop and you lose that, you know, we do have security tool sets that allow you to do a remote wipe of that while still retaining your software. And again, one of these other key concerns as well is ransomware. You know, that getting into the system. So we did something a while ago called Defense Loop, which basically, as you back your data up into our cloud, we check it for ransomware. Now, ransomware is evolving all the time, and maybe the software doesn't recognize it at the time. So what we then do on the second loop, so if you need to restore that data, rather than just putting it straight back onto a new piece of hardware, we will then sort of go through the process of checking it again, because our databases or viruses, new techniques are you know, in place, technologies to kind of understand that. So, you know, potentially if it's a ransomware in your data sets, then we can stop it sort of being loaded back on as well. So, and these are the little bits of considerations of you know, taking this into account, you know, how to really run and manage the cloud. But you know, there's plenty of little services around that bolt together to kind of give you the ultimate goal of managing and running your business.
Yeah, fantastic. And especially when we think moving forwards, because it's not just about the here and now, it's about, what does business look like 12, 18, 24 months out? And a lot of organizations at the moment are thinking about divesting out of office space because they've proved the point that their staff can work remotely. Is cloud, in my mind, just seems to be the next consideration. Once you've decided that you're moving out of an office, the next thing to think about is cloud services, right?
Yeah, I mean, that really helps. And, everyone keeps asking and saying, what is the new norm going to be like? And, even if we could all go back into the office tomorrow, I think there's, the work-life balance that people are starting to enjoy. Spoken to people that were commuting an hour to 2 hours every morning. That's out the window now, but there's the collaborative bit where getting back into the office makes sense because you are still having that relationship with your colleagues and you are formulating plans and doing that. Working from home is a very good use of your time. A lot of people talk about productivity, and this cloud side really helps, and you can integrate everything together, whether you've got your hosted desktop or you've got some applications. We work with some of our partners that use our platform for their own hosted telephony services. And we've been recently working on a product. So Microsoft Office 365 or Microsoft 365 have a inbuilt voice application. So you can make standard telephone calls from it, but it's quite expensive. And as you can imagine from Microsoft, it's quite limited in its functionality. But again, it has got I think some of the packages start at £30 a month per user. So we're working on products, that can basically interrupt that, or intercept basically the Microsoft Teams, and then integrates with your system. So you can make calls from your Microsoft Teams.
The other thing as well as being cloud in that regard, it doesn't matter the locality of where you are as the individual, right? You've got that flexibility to be in an office one day and then home the next and still have the right connections, right?
Yeah.
Let's replay the security bit a little bit just to kind of put everybody's mind at rest. 10 years ago, how many finance houses were in the cloud?
Yeah.
Banks and people like that.
It was, I think, back in them days, what they were calling it was a private cloud. So rather than moving to a public cloud, they were moving to private clouds that were kind of locked down. And, it was the same sort of concept of cloud, but only on infrastructure that they owned and controlled. So it gave them the feature sets of cloud, but it also gave them the cost of it as well. So whether it being shared infrastructure or, a big data center with loads of servers in it, etc. So, there was that concept of moving to the cloud, but now that's opened up because there are, again, the additional security policies coming in, the firewalls, and people are becoming a bit more understanding that there is a need for the cybersecurity. And we're not just talking about network access now, we're talking about inside out threats as well, because you've got a rogue employee, you've got someone that's accidentally deleted data. All these things need to be taken into consideration. And it's also about the control about who's got access to what. And, you can even time some of this down to, times of day. So you're limiting people access to this. And then you can look at the applications itself. So you can control what applications people have access to and how data flows. And you can monitor this now. So, this is still a big work in progress, but, to have this kind of, low touch security wrap around us that makes us nice and cozy, but still gives us access to everything, is still a work in progress. But these days, compared to the 10 years ago, it's a very much here now type solution.
And I personally know many banks that have migrated a lot of services to cloud and not their own private cloud, but public cloud as a result of it, right? And so the trust is there and the confidence is there with the right security deployed. And that's really what we're saying, right?
Yeah, because they've looked at it, and their data center that they may have is costing them £4 to £10 million a year to maintain. And then they can see that actually they could spend some of that budget onto the security element of it, move into the public cloud, have the engineers around that, you know, and that sort of really helps. And it's having an understanding of that, the skill sets, the kind of say, okay, well, you're running these applications, you're running these you know, this you know, number of staff, a number of offices, and then how you can help with that. And that's one of the key things that we trying to do with our customers is help when we're onboarding them. You know, they might not have necessary, you know, they know they want to move to the cloud, just don't know how to. And, you know, one of the number one things here is how do you secure the, you know, secure the access to the cloud. And there's always this bit of sort of two pillars really. You know, one is security and one's accessible. You know, the more you move towards security, the ability to access everything fast and reliable sort of moves away. And then if you move back the other way, you move away from security. But these pillars are becoming closer and closer together now. So sort of sitting in the middle gives you the benefit of having security and fast, reliable access to all your services and data.
That's a great point. And it's, yeah, things like micro-segmentation and all the other, you know, software-defined networking capabilities allows you to do that. You're coming in from a device that's known, that's healthy, right? And being able to get access to those services. With regards to, you know, the actual migration projects themselves, I'm guessing a lot of these can be almost seamless and invisible to the end user. They don't know that they're connecting to a cloud-based service now. They just know they're getting email, or they just know they're able to connect to finance, right?
Yeah, and we have a number of solutions for migrating data. So, you know, we are a VMware certified provider in the UK. We hold a VMware Cloud Verified certification, which I think made us about 9th in the UK to hold it. You know, and other people within that remit are the likes of IBM. You know, so there's some big players that hold this certification, and this allows us to do a number of things because you know, if we've got some enterprise customers that maybe have a VMware infrastructure, we can really easily pick that up and move it to our cloud. And then we've got all the other tool sets that allow us to move Microsoft Hyper-V, you know, migration of data sets into our cloud. And then obviously once it's sort of housed within our cloud, you know, we can then have, you know, the firewalls around it. We can have, you know, VPN access to it. We can do, if you have an office with 3 sites, you know, we can connect them into a private network with access to the cloud. So again, that's not VPN enabled. You know, typically one at the moment is, you know, if you do have a, you know, an IP address within your router office, you know, from that side, we can control access to that. And the same with mobile devices. So, you know, the VPN is either a constant connection, it can be used ad hoc when you need it, or we can provide the, you know, a complete nailed up connection, as they call it, that just allows you to access the data, but it's within a secured tunnel.
Okay, so, I mean, days of old, it typically went like this. We run out of capacity, you put an order in, about 3-4 weeks later, stuff turned up from your server provider. You wheeled it across the office. You spent half the day hooking it up to traditional services. And by the time you're done, 2 days later, maybe 3 days later, you had some kind of software running on there that people could use. Now, silicon doesn't reproduce itself, right? Unfortunately, but they go on about cloud being elastic and being able to just infinitely scale. How do you guys work with customers that are going through you know, those sort of challenges, which is we want to deploy, say, for instance, for argument's sake, 50 desktops today, but you know, next month we need 100, then we want 200. How do you guys help with the scaling side of things? And
so on our platform, you know, so we've got Cambridge and we've also got a data center in London. And as we manage this, what we're doing is we're looking at the capacity and the growth of this and forecasts, and we're looking at the trends that are going on with that. You know, and again, being a bit more closer to our customers, you know, we're talking to them a little bit more. So we understand that maybe, you know, one of them is going to go for an acquisition. They're looking to plan that. They're talking to us about, you know, how can we help them out on the IT side? But it is elastic, you know, and there's a couple of sort of ways that we work in our cloud. So, you know, you can have a block of resources, like a pool, for example, and then you can kind of delve in and out of this pool and have, you know, the requirements of it, because maybe running a small Linux server won't require as much resources as a bigger Microsoft Windows server. So in effect, by using the pooled method, the Linux server can pinch some of the resources that would have been assigned to the Windows server. So in effect, you're getting to run a free Linux server. And then, that's your pool that you can delve in and use as you like, as that goes. And then we have our global pool, as it were, within the data center, which allows you to kind of bring resources in as you want. So, 1 week you could be running 50, the next week you could be running 100 desktops, and then a month later you scale back down to 50. So within that period of time, you're only going to pay for the 50 that, additional 50 that you'll want to use. So, it does have that ability to scale. But, the real close bit there is actually working with our customers and understanding where they're going. It's nice to get a call to say, we've got this concept, we've got this idea, we need this. We help them out as well with potential trials, working with customers, so and different vendors. So there could be a bit where we're, for example, as I was saying, the Microsoft one, the idea this came from one of our partners that wanted to do Microsoft Teams voice. So we worked out a solution to kind of build that on our platform for them, but it also helps a number of other customers to achieve this. So we work in tandem with them, as well as partners like NVIDIA, which allows for a lot more complex compute, so AI solutions. But we can work with them and we can say, we've got a customer, they're trying to achieve this, they're looking at some new technologies. Can we help with a POC, maybe bring some hardware in, we attach it to our cloud, and these are definitely the sort of services that you won't get with the big hyperscalers.
Yeah, and when we start to think about certain sectors, not so much retail, but it was always the kind of go-to use case that we had in the past, which was, seasonal activity where you need to scale, but you don't want the investment in infrastructure for an entire year. How does that work with yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, there's no other tools on there, and actually the great case for this one is a company that was had their websites, and basically it was on a TV advert, and basically what happens is every time the advert goes out with their offer, the websites are getting hit. So we have tool sets that allow us to monitor the use of RAM, CPU, disk, and network, etc. And we can scale that on demand. So, for the couple of hours that this advert goes out in the evening, it runs, and then it's, it comes back down. They're only paying for that sort of resource within that period of time. But within the cloud, there's tool sets to help the ability to scale as when required. So you're not going to have a website that goes offline because it's got X amount of users on it. So, it does allow for things like that more elastic, a bit more dynamic, time sensitive, and that's coming down to minutes and seconds when it's looking at it rather than hours. And to be able to do something like that for someone that's really relying on it when they spend quite a lot of money on a TV advert, the back end systems really need to be performed to be able to get people logging in and buying, really. So
yeah, fantastic. And again, it just makes it easier because you haven't got those outages, you haven't got the kind of egg on your face when the website doesn't respond. What does it mean to loss of business? There's all these sort of challenges. Has anybody else been in an office capacity where the server's gone down and everyone's just stood there going, well, I can't get email, so I can't work now for the next 3 hours? Has anyone else had that experience? Typically it was about 10 years ago, but I'm going to assume some people have. And when you think about email's the kind of go-to one for me, purely and simply because most people have been using it and it's been cloud-based. How many people here know that their email is based in the cloud as opposed to on-premise? No hands. Rupert, you must know. I'm not going to say it. So
I'm not commenting.
But yeah, on that basis, I mean, it has been the direction of travel, right, for about the last 10 years, really, the sort of hybrid cloud world, the private cloud through to sort of cloud native, if you like. Any sort of words to anybody that's thinking about standing up new services today to go to the cloud first in terms of getting an idea of what that looks like? Do you typically see customers saying, hey, we're thinking about this? What would it look like in the cloud? Yeah,
I think that the first bit there is obviously you can talk to us, or we can help advise you know, it might not necessarily be that that is right for you, or maybe the timing's right, but, you know, we will put forward our expertise and to do that. Secondly, you know, we can help you run a trial. You know, we will do something for 14 or 30 days to kind of, you know, proof of concept to getting on the board. You know, there's no cost to that. So, you know, you can look at it, take a real good look under the bonnet to see if that is actually going to work for you. So, you know, we're here to help and advise, really.
Awesome. Any other questions from anybody? I'm going to go with the standard 5-second rule on Zoom. If you can't get on in 5 seconds, yeah, I mean it's something we'll definitely have a conversation later. I'd love to have a conversation another time about how we can migrate our application services to the cloud. From our perspective, you know, it's a fundamental in terms of what we do. What about things like disaster recovery? Because in my mind, this is really where the cloud starts to excel. You know, if you've got on-premise kit, typically if an office burns down, there's not a lot left, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, so there is a few scenarios that we've worked with. One is when people have had a VMware infrastructure on premise, we've backed that up to our cloud. So, you know, while they are having some of the facilities of things being local, they do a running backup in the cloud. So if their office did burn down, they can still carry on working, they can access it via VPN, and it's exactly the same. We've spent a lot of considerable time and a lot of money into basically doing DR services. So, you know, our primary site, Cambridge, you know, it's an ex-government building, it's extremely secure. We have a lot of connectivity into the building. So the connectivity is also diverse. So it goes out of different areas. The same with power. You know, we have a lot of resource in power there and diesel generators. And then we have our facility in London as well. So what we can do, and it works both directions, you know, we can have services running in Cambridge and then it's backed up to London. Rather than just being backed up, this is a proper DR as a service. So, you know, it could be for, you know, as an example, that something happened to the servers in Cambridge. You know, this would then load into London. And typically, you know, this could be, you know, minutes of outages while the servers fold over. So there's some intelligence that goes on to monitoring that. You know, it could be a connectivity issue. And again, you know, we do have, you know, customers who take London as the primary site because they need and want to be focused within the city area, the high frequency trading area. But, you know, we then allow the DR systems to fall back into Cambridge. You know, the latency is still quite low. Obviously, you know, UK is not a massive place for for transit, etc. But it does give that peace of mind. And, you know, the systems allow us to do different levels of SLAs against that as well. So, you know, like a database server may have high priority because it's running everything in the background, it's got all the data on. But maybe, you know, an email server or, you know, a very small server may have a different SLA. So we would look to get the SQL server moved across, loaded, and then all the other servers follow in order because, you know, it just doesn't make sense to kind of pay for that sort of, you know, additional service when it's not required. But we've got that full feature of DR as a service. You know, we have the backup as well. You know, typically if you've got a server running and it gets deleted by accident or someone deletes the data on there, then it can be restored. So, you know, we're covering sort of every aspect of that. We also recently brought on a new vendor called Pure. So these are high-speed NVMe and flash array storage devices. So it's extremely fast. You know, they are in the Gartner Magic Quadrant at the moment, and they are really performing well. And so we're offering high-speed data storage services. And the sort of resilience that go with these as well, because they are stacked up, you know, and work as a single unit, and then they've got the failover bit between Cambridge and London. So, you know, we're investing into that side, and we have a contract with them that's called Evergreen. So basically, the NOC in the UK is monitoring these devices. So how that goes, and then when we get into a sort of 60–70% capacity on any of these, a new box turns up and we then plug that in and it expands the data over there. So we're continuously expanding the you know, the data centers, the cloud, and just the way it's all sort of managed to make things easy and make sure there's no interruption to our customers.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, some of the technology that's coming through in terms of speeds and various other things is pretty mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
Who knows where 5G is going to get us 3, 4, 5 years out, the unintended consequences of that. But
That's another topic.
yeah, it's a completely separate topic. But when you start to think about cloud and think about capacity, if people can start to consume more data and create more data, where's that going to go? And this is, really important. So, anybody on the call that wants to get involved with yourselves, that wants to understand where some of the advantages are for their business, what's the next steps? What sort of offers are out there at the moment? How can people consume cloud services from yourselves?
More than free to reach out to us direct. I'll post the details, but it's worth noting that we've worked with the Cambridgeshire Chamber of Commerce to put together a specific member benefit. So anyone who is a member of the Chambers can subscribe to all our cloud services at a heavily discounted rate. So we wanted to work with the Chambers. We knew that people were struggling a little bit right now, COVID impacting businesses, etc., and so on, and we wanted to do something that would help alleviate some of that pressure if we could. There's a form that you can fill out I'll circulate details, but there's a form that you can fill out on the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce website that will put you in contact with us and give you that specific discount.
That's a very neat way of bringing it together, because Sadie's just shared the link in the chat for anybody that wants it. We'll also make sure it goes around on email, but the form's also created using our solution, so that's a nice way of bringing that together. So have you got any ambitions to start sinking containers into the North Sea to do data centers underwater?
It's funny you should say that.
Yeah,
we're not sinking containers into the North Sea, but we are filling up IT with liquid. So we're doing it the other way around.
Right. Okay.
So it's so we get off topic a little bit, but it's something that we've been doing for a long time. There's a lot of stuff that's not on our website. We do a lot of R&D work, and we are big in the immersion space, which is, if people don't know what that is, it's actually using liquid to cool your IT. So there's a number of reasons for this. One, it's very, very, very cost effective, which means that we can pass on those cost savings to our customers. But it's also great for the planet, right? If it slashes our energy bill by 50%, it's great because we don't have to burn lots and lots and lots and lots of energy to cool IT equipment. So if you look at data centers consuming somewhere in the order of magnitude of 10% of all the Earth's power right now, that could be a huge saving, especially when there's countries that are strapped for energy. So if we can consume less, great. And also if you scale it up, there's the give back as well. Green credentials, you can repurpose that heat. So we're going to repurpose the heat and use it to actually heat our building in Cambridge, which cuts our energy bill even further. So yeah, when you said sinking containers into the sea, no, we're just filling stuff up with liquid instead. And we do have an edge data center that we're taking to market shortly, that's basically full of cloud and full of immersed IT. So instead of it being a box underwater, it's a box full of water. Except it's not water, it's a dielectric fluid. But we digress. We digress. But it's stuff like that keeps me interested in technology.
Absolutely. But also as well, you touch on some really key points there, which is, instead of fans blowing out hot air all over, it's good for the planet. When we think of consumption of this, it's great to see that this is on your radar, because
absolutely. I mean, if you look at all the benefits, I could reel them off all day long, but if you look at the benefits, so if you look at when you're calculating PUE of a server, which is how people in the industry work out exactly how power efficient your data center is, and what you do is you then work out the metric for each individual server, see how much power it's consuming, and you add up all the power that your server's consuming, and you compare that to the total consumption of the building, and that works out your power usage effectiveness, your PUE. That metric is kind of a flawed metric. You look at how you calculate it, and per server, you look at the energy the server consumes. It's everything in the box, and that includes the fans. So just by taking the fans out of the box, you're saving somewhere between 30 to 50% of your energy, depending on whether the box is idle or running really hard. So it's not just the air conditioning, it's not just the big crack units, it's the DX chillers that keep your data center cold. It's everything else. It's the stuff that goes in the box as well. and the density is incredible. If you do it right, you know, you can reduce your footprint for IT by about 80%. So instead of building 100,000 square foot building and all the, you know, environmental impact that has, you build a 20,000 square foot building. You know, so
that's huge. That's
it is huge. It is huge. And of course, you know, it's not only a smaller building, it's less energy, so it's better for everybody. You know, and there's other cost savings as well. You know, data centers have this concept. Not a lot of people, I don't know how many people on the call know this, but data centers have this concept of a raised floor. It goes back to the old mainframe days where they push cold air under the floor and then up into the server room, which always struck me as crazy because it's really hard work to push cold air up. Can't you just drop it down? Never mind. But anyway, and then, but that whole concept of raised floor, you know, it costs a lot of money to put one of those in. You don't need one of those either because you're not moving around. So yeah, we do lots of stuff, you know, that's not on our website. But yeah, we keep stuff like that more than on our radar. We're actively working in that space. So yeah, we want to make sure that we're as green and friendly as possible for more than one reason.
And for everybody on the call, and for those that know, you know, every time you stream a video on YouTube, a server in a data somewhere spins a little bit harder, and that's really
absolutely right. Yeah, burns more energy.
Yeah. So the fact that that's, you know, front and center in mind is super important. Is there any other questions before we sort of wrap up? I'm going to go with the 5-second rule again. In which case, I'll hand over to you, John. You don't look like you need cooling down at the moment, though.
No, I have to say this completely baffles me. As long as I can just access what I want, when I want, how I want, and it works, that's really what I'm looking at. But it's great to have such fantastic specialists and professionals who deal with it all behind the scenes, because the real key is to ensure we don't have business interruption in any way, shape or form. And forward, the need for the flexibility in terms of people working from offices and home, and you know, the kind of balance that may or may not be going. Who knows whether it'll be 90% people return to the office or 40% people return to the office. I don't think any of us understand that, but we do understand that we need good IT systems and we need safe and secure places to keep all our data and make sure that we can run our businesses the way we want. So we're delighted to obviously partner with Chris and Lee and their company and to provide the opportunity for people to obviously procure their services at preferential rates by being members of Cambridgeshire Chamber. But the key thing is it's something that we all need to focus on, look at, and it is important to look at all those options. And I hope people that are with us, and I know other people we're talking to are certainly going to look at those options and understand how they can make sure that they have fully secure, effective systems that will give them 100% confidence. And I know through Chris and Lee and the company and all the things that I've seen and talked to them about, then it is with people who know and understand exactly what is required and making sure that everything is safe and protected in the way that it needs to be in this modern day and age. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon, everybody, and particularly Chris and Lee. And of course, Ollie, as always, who looks after these sessions for us, which we do really appreciate, Ollie, for you dealing with that. So thanks to you, and thanks for everybody being on. And I'll just hand back to you, Ollie.
Awesome. Thanks very much, John. What's not to like, right? Potential cost savings and the ability to work from anywhere. It seems to me that helps future-proof the rest of this year. So yeah, we'll circulate the recording as always. We'll distribute the link that was in the chat with regards to how you can sign up and get a bit more information and see how this works for your business. Chris, Lee, it's been awesome actually, because you've taken me back to my former employment days before I started doing this crazy venture. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, lovely to see everybody again and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Excellent.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Next time we'll talk about ransomware as well.